So now here's the big moment of enlightenment. Here's the reason why you'll never be stuck in a rut ever again. It's because now I've taught thousands of guitar lessons. I lost track a long time ago. I might be over 10,000 by now. But one thing has become abundantly clear in all of that teaching. It's the #1 struggle that guitarists deal with. And let me tell you, it has nothing to do with technique. It has nothing to do with lack of theory knowledge. It has everything to do with being stuck in a rut. That's the #1 reason why people are looking for lessons, because they can get all the theory knowledge for free. They can get all the technical knowledge for free, but no one can tell them how to escape the rut. Except for me. I'm gonna tell you right now how to never be stuck in a rut ever again. So you better watch to the end of this video, because this is gonna be life-changing. So first, let's understand, why are guitarists stuck in a rut? This is because most of the time, guitarists are prioritizing scales in their practice, right? They want to memorize scales. They want to play scales faster. They want to learn scale patterns. And I understand this because it's a pretty easy approach to practice. It's kind of like having a checklist where you can feel accomplished once you check off that you've practiced all your scales. And so that's satisfactory to a point, but it all breaks down the moment you go to your first jam session and you suddenly realize that even after all that scale practice, you literally can't make music with others. You literally can't express yourself in the context of musical performance. And that's the rut, right? Knowing that you actually haven't equipped yourself to perform. And this is of course due to the fact that you spent all your time working on scales instead of generating useful musical vocabulary. Useful musical vocabulary being things that will serve you in musical performance. Right? Now it becomes clear, well, scales, they don't really serve you in musical performance. There's a whole other paradigm, and we're gonna get to that. But first we need to understand what useful musical vocabulary actually is, and how do we construct it? Well, to understand what useful vocabulary is, we could start by simply understanding what exactly is happening at a jam session. Because really, a great musician is a musician who has mastered the art of the jam. It's someone who can go and play with musicians they've never met or rehearsed with ever before and just throw down unequivocally and just exude confidence in that spontaneous performance environment known as the jam session. Well, in 2025, jams have gotten pretty sophisticated. You can go to a jam session in literally any part of the world and you're gonna hear musicians playing on jazz standards. And those standards could be played in any style. You for sure see a lot of hip hop grooves underneath jazz standards, but you could have funk, you could have rock, there's really no limit to the style, and including the time signature. Somebody might call 26, 2, and 7. I've seen it happen back when Fat Cat was a thing, you remember that? But regardless of the style, the forms of the jazz standards are the glue that holds a jam session together. The forms are what make it possible for musicians to play coherently together, even if they've never met ever in their lives. So this is what I'm talking about when I say the jams are sophisticated. If you go to a jam, you are expected to know a handful of jazz standards, and you're expected to be able to play them in a lot of different styles. So now this takes us back to the concept of useful vocabulary. See, what makes vocabulary useful is that it can be played in the context of jazz standards. And now it starts to unravel, right? The jazz standards should be the guiding principle of your practice, regardless of what style of musician you want to be. And this is because all music can be understood in the context of the jazz standard framework. Doesn't matter if it's Tool, it's Meshuggah, it's Polyphia, it's Chon. All music boils down to chord changes moving through time in support of a melody. So once you understand that this is what all music boils down to, you have the guiding principle for the creation of useful vocabulary. And what you'll find when you begin to see all music in the context of the jazz standard framework, where you have chord changes moving through time in support of a melody, triads are the foundation of all useful musical vocabulary. And it's not to say that scales don't have their place, it's just that scales are only useful when you see them against triads. And here's where I'm gonna flip your script for a quick second. I know a lot of people associate triads with chord voicings, and they associate scales with melody. But in practice, It is literally the exact opposite. You see, scales are really useful when it comes to constructing chords, as chords tend to make use of all 7 notes within a scale, while triads serve to imply chord changes when used melodically. It's best to think about it like this. When you're playing a melody, you're playing only 1 note at a time. That means that you need to be more selective about which notes you're choosing. But when you're playing chords, you're playing more than 1 note. You're playing 3, 4, 5 notes at a time. So you can afford to add some of those upper structure tensions in your chord voicings. But with the nature of melody being single notes, you can't really afford to play notes that don't specifically and unequivocally imply the chord change. And that's where the triadic fundamental becomes super relevant, because the triad most clearly implies the chord change, not necessarily the quality of the chord, but the chord change itself. So now you see, chord voicings are extremely useful in implying the quality of a chord, while triads are more useful in implying the transitions from one chord to the next. And that's the thing that most guitarists really struggle with. They struggle with playing transitions. They struggle with playing chord changes. And that's because they're trying to use scales to play chord changes. And that's extremely difficult. Not to say it's impossible, it's definitely possible at a very high level of proficiency, but before you're gonna get to that level of proficiency, you gotta be absolutely 100,000% bulletproof on that triadic foundation. It's all about hearing the scales with respect to the triads. So there's a process. See, the triads will become the base of your aural cognition. It's like the meat and potatoes. Once you have your meat and potatoes, then you can add the herbs and spices on top, which are the extensions, what's beyond the triad, the 7th, the 9, the 11, the 13. So now here's the big moment of enlightenment. Here's the reason why you'll never be stuck in a rut ever again. It's because now you're going to use jazz standards as the guiding principle for your practice. Now you're going to generate vocabulary in the context of jazz standards. So guess what? You want to generate new vocabulary? Learn a new jazz standard. And considering there's literally thousands of jazz standards, you'll never be stuck in a rut ever again. So now, of course, you might be asking yourself,
well, how do I use triads to generate vocabulary in the context of jazz standards?
the first thing you can do is start to master triads across the full range of the guitar. That's the first thing you do. Now, to do that, you can take my free course, Intro to Fretboard Mastery, first link in the description. That's gonna show you how to map out triadic pathways across the full range of the guitar. This is gonna open up the horizontal visualization schematic, what some people call out of position playing. That free course is going to get you 1000% crystal clear on the fundamentals of triads and triadic voice leading through simple progressions, starting with 5-1 progressions and voice leading triads through those 5-1 progressions. Now, from there, the next step is to start applying those full range triadic pathways through more complex chord change sequences. And that's where we call them the jazz standards. And honestly, that's where a teacher is going to save you 15 years of aimless practice. So if you're thinking you'd like to work with me, the first thing you're gonna do is you're just gonna get my free intro course. You're gonna watch that 30-minute video. You're gonna get those 3 full range triadic pathways under your fingers, just so you can get a feel for my method. And if that's resonating with you, well, then it's gonna be pretty obvious, you belong in my program. Now, a couple videos I did mention there's a price increase coming, but that price increase has not happened yet. So if you're really serious about achieving comprehensive musical fluency and becoming a true master of the guitar, you wanna make your moves fast, all right? So, you know what to do. Get Intro to Fretboard Mastery and then get back to me. Talk to you soon.